Welcome to our show again tonight. I'm Arthur Fite. This is Fite for Justice. I'm here today again with my partner and son, Freeman Fite. As you know, we do personal injury and divorce cases, but we also try to do this show to give you general information about various legal subjects that might be of interest to you. Tonight, we have another special guest, Karen Roper. Karen is the Commissioner of Revenue for Calhoun County. She's in charge of assessing and collecting property taxes, both for real estate and personal property, and redemptions, which is another subject. She's worked in this office over 35 years, and for the last 10 years, Karen has been the Commissioner of Revenue. That office was combined with the tax collection and tax assessor's office into one person in charge of both. Karen, welcome to the show. We're glad to have you here.
Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, speak up, and we don't, anytime you want to say something, just do it, and we're going to go through a litany of questions here about how your office works and how much fun you have taking people's money and assessing their property.
I love it.
By the way, I wanted to ask you this question up front. Have you ever had anybody come into your office and complain that the taxes were too low?
Yes, we have.
Does that happen very often?
Not too often, but when the bypass come through, a lot of them's value was too low. They wanted those values up a little bit more.
But most of the questions are about, complaints really are about assessing it too high.
That's exactly right.
Okay. Well, let's talk a minute about how this whole process works. How is property valued? How do they come up with these numbers, and who does it?
We have appraisers in our office that uses the Alabama guidelines. All 67 counties use the same manual to appraise property values in each county.
Can you tell us a little bit about how that manual works, what they go by, what they look for?
Well, they'll go out and they measure the buildings that's on the property. They use the square footage, they use the exterior, they use the number of bathrooms, heating units. If it's commercial building, they usually get with the one that made the plans, and so that we'll be more exact. And we use those plans, and we do apex drawings. And the manual gives so many index points for brick, so much for the roof, and so. And all this is taken into consideration along with the base area and adjusted area of the improvement on the property to create a value.
Would it be fair to describe this as a ground-up evaluation? You start with the land and the square footage. You don't look at comparables then, do you, in this process?
Oh, yes, we do.
Tell us about that.
You may have a subdivision that comes into effect, and you have a contractor that's created this subdivision, so we don't have any sales in that area, so we have to start waiting until that contractor starts selling the lots in order for us to be able to value each one individually. Well, now, as you know, since around 2008, what's happened to property values in this county? They have decreased. Would you have a guesstimate as to how much property values have declined here? Probably 5%. 5%. Mm-hmm. Now, some houses, I know some of the higher end homes have decreased more than that. We're talking 30, 40% as much. Mm-hmm. What happens when you get a homeowner complain that he can't sell his house for $250, it's now $150? Well, we have to go by the state guidelines and stay within those guidelines, and if we can't lower it by those state guidelines, then that person has the right to protest to the Board of Equalization. Okay, we're going to talk about that in a second. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about how homeowners are notified the value of their property. Tell us about that. June or July of each year, if you're a new owner or if the value of your property increases, then we're required by law to notify you by mail from the Board of Equalization as to what that value is. It's broken down into a land value and an improvement value. Now, you mentioned that if the value increases, who determines if there's an increase? The increase is determined actually by the state, because we reappraise a quarter of the counties each year. So at the end of 4 years, you've done everybody. You've done everybody. Then we do, right this year is a good example, we're doing the entire county. So, all in 1 year? we have gathered data from 4 years, and this right here, we're grouping it all together, doing sales ratio studies to determine what areas may increase and what areas may decrease.
So the values may go up or down.
They may go up or down.
And to you, it doesn't make any difference. You just got to go by these guidelines.
That's exactly right.
How can you do every piece of property in 1 year? You don't have enough appraisers, do you?
Well, through the years, they have each one has a neighborhood, and their sole concern is to keep up with everything going on in that neighborhood. So at the end of 4 years, all the data, if a new parcel comes along, we keep up everything that goes on in each neighborhood. So at the end of that 4 years, they should have that data to create this 5th year appraisal.
So Freeman lives on Forest Lane. Is that a neighborhood?
It is. The neighborhood may consist, it's just according to how dense it is. You can get up into the Piedmont area, and the neighborhood is really large. But you get into some of the subdivisions, and we just have to break it down based on what's in that neighborhood.
So what would you like to know about your neighborhood, Freeman?
Well, at first, the taxes won't go up every year. They can stay the same, can't they?
They can stay the same, and we've seen that consistency for the last 4 years.
What is it? I know that the appraisal can go up. What's another way that the taxes can go up on your property?
Well, it's through appraisal or let's see.
Couldn't there be an increase in the mill rate? I believe that's what you call it.
Yeah, I didn't even think of that because we haven't had a mill increase in such a number of years, but it could go up by mill rate.
Okay, and I think a lot of people hear the phrase homestead exemption, but they don't really know what that is. Could you explain that to our audience?
Homestead exemption allows the person that owns and occupies that residence, it's a single family dwelling, to come in and claim the exemption. The county allows $2,000, which in Calhoun County amounts to $25 off. The state allows $4,000, which in tax money is $26 off. So if you're a young person, the maximum amount you can receive off for a homestead exemption is $51.
Okay, we have about 15 seconds left in this segment. There are other exemptions besides the homestead exemption. That's the one passed by the legislature. When we come back, we're going to talk about the other exemptions. We'll be back in a couple of minutes. Hey, welcome back to the second segment of Fight for Justice. I'm Arthur Fite, and my partner and son, Freeman Fite, is with me today. And today, as we announced earlier, we have a special guest, Karen Roper, who's the Commissioner of Revenue for Calhoun County. That's the office where you get your property appraised for taxes. You pay your property taxes, both real and personal. And if you don't like the rate, you get a chance to appeal it, and we're going to go through that process in a minute. And you get to redeem it if it gets sold, and people are often confused about how that redemption works. So we were talking about exemptions. There's a homestead exemption. What other exemptions can you claim to lower the taxes on your property?
Okay, we have an age exemption if you're 65 years or older. Regardless of your income, the state portion is exempt if you come in and apply. In order to be totally exempt, it is based on income. Your income has to be $12,000 or less taxable income. There's another exemption in there, but it's really detailed.
Yeah, and then you've got some industrial and historical exemptions.
We do, but we want to go back to the disability exemption. People that are totally disabled through Social Security or a letter from 2 doctors or a government job, if they own and occupy the house, then they can. The age exemption and the disability exemption can be exempt up on the home and 160 acres of adjoining land.
Okay.
So if you're disabled, it is not based on income.
Now those taxes you pay, we haven't talked about this, but they're made of different components. State, local, school taxes, and so on. What are the different components for the total amount?
There's a county, city, school, and state. That's
4 of them.
4 of them that makes up the total millage rates.
And you just combine that in one, and you pay it in. You pay it into the Revenue Department. Who actually sees that it goes to the right pocket?
Our collection department is where you pay your property tax, and that's where we disperse all the monies.
Okay, so when do you disperse it?
We disperse it the 1st and 15th of each month.
Based on your collections?
Based on our collections.
So how much money is collected in these taxes every year here?
We abstract around $43 million a year to be abstracted.
And how much of that goes to schools?
It's really hard to say because the millage rates are different.
Yeah.
And it's just according to if it's a county school or city
But the
school.
state's uniform.
The state's uniform.
What do they take out of that cut, generally?
Theirs is 3 meals.
So how much?
3 meals of the 6.5 meals goes to schools.
Total 6.5.
That's a total 6.
So they get about half of it. Okay.
I think maybe most people aren't going to know what a mill is. Can you explain?
A meal
what
is
a mill is?
1/10 of 1 cent. So if you had a $100,000 house at a 10% tax rate and the millage of 32.5 meals, it would be $325. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And talking about the millage rate and so on, it varies depending on where you live in the county too, doesn't it?
It does. Even the northern and southern district of the county, the millage is different because the school rates millage is different. The city of Anniston is different. Jacksonville and Oxford have the same millage rates.
Okay.
I think some people, would want to know if you don't receive a notice in the mail, do you have to pay the taxes on the property?
You do. The law does not require us to mail an initial tax notification. We do it as a courtesy to the people. However, if you don't receive one, if you'll contact us, we'll be glad to send a notification in the mail.
Okay.
Well, that raises another question too. When the property is transferred from one person to another, what's the obligation of the new owner?
The new owner is responsible for paying the taxes initially, because once a seller has sold it, he has no responsibility at that point to make sure those taxes are paid. We do, if you come in and assess your property, the property tax may not come out into your name. It may be in the former owner's name according to what time of the year you purchase it, but we will mail the tax bill so that you'll get notification of how much it is.
Isn't that why it's so important when you buy a new piece of property? Of course, that's one of many. There are many other reasons we won't get into today, but that's one of the important reasons why you need to record the deed immediately.
That's exactly right. Now the law requires you to have a value that was paid for the property, and if you don't have the value, then the probate judge sends you down to our office to get an appraised value, and based on the appraised value is what you pay for your
Because there's a tax on the deed.
There's a tax on the deed.
And you see it all the time where somebody says they paid $10, and we know that's not true.
That's exactly right.
They're supposed to give the real value, and the tax for recording the deed is the deed recording tax as well as the annual real estate taxes.
That's exactly right.
Now, the person who buys the property, does he have an obligation to come in and reassess it then, or do y'all do that?
If the person does not come in, we have what we call perpetual assessment. We pick the deeds up in the probate office and we go ahead and we work the document. However, if you was entitled to a homestead exemption, you would be missing the homestead exemption, and then there's a $5 fee for non-assessment of the property.
So the best practice is when you get your new deeds, come to your office and get it reassessed.
That's exactly
in your
right.
name.
That's exactly right, because there may be a house or improvement that has burned on the property or some other kind of destruction that we're not aware of.
Okay. If you'll put up on the screen the deadlines that we have, the table on deadlines, we'll talk about that. You can find it. All right, now up on our screen we have the deadlines involving taxes. Let's look at the first one. What does October 1st deadline mean?
October 1st is when the taxes become due.
And they are due for how far? They're paid in arrears, aren't they?
They're paid in arrears.
You don't pay them in advance. So October 1st means back to October 1st of the prior year.
Of the prior year.
Right. And if you don't pay them on October 1st, is there any penalty for not paying them on October 1st?
No, there's no penalty. You have until December 31st, or they actually become delinquent January 1.
Okay.
And at that time we add fees and penalties.
And what's sort of the average fee and penalty that gets added to the?
There's a $5 fee, and it's a % a month interest on the taxes.
When they're delinquent. So if you you haven't paid your taxes by January 1st, nothing really bad happens at that point, does it?
Nothing really bad happens.
But down the road, something bad's going to happen. Tell us about that.
Well, down the road, we advertise. We send out 2 more delinquent notices, and then we advertise 3 times in the paper, and to let the people know that their property taxes haven't been paid.
You send them a notice in the mail.
We send them.
And that's that big ad I see in the paper that lists all the property owners.
Mm-hmm. Well,
and I hope my name's not on there.
We send 3 notices in the mail,
okay.
And then we advertise. The probate judges advertise, and then we advertise 3 times in the paper. It's on a Sunday, 3 consecutive Sundays, so that maybe if you haven't seen it, maybe your neighbor will see that you're delinquent.
Yeah, everybody doesn't take the paper.
That's exactly right.
But they should know when their taxes are due and they hadn't paid them, though, right? All right, so after you advertise, then when does the really bad stuff happen?
Oh, the 2nd Tuesday in the month of May, Calhoun County auctions off their real estate. And if the property isn't purchased by an individual or a company at the auction, those properties are sent down to the state of Alabama, and they stay on their books there until either the property is redeemed or until a person writes to the state and requests to buy the state's interest in the tax sale property.
So they're sold to the state, aren't they?
That's exactly.
Not to Calhoun County.
No, to the state of Alabama.
To the state of Alabama. Or they can be sold to somebody else who bids on them.
That's exactly right.
It could be a third party.
That's right.
That's right. Okay. I thought that was the process. And we're going to take this up in the 3rd segment about how you redeem the property. But how you redeem the property once it's been sold, can you get it back? The answer is yes. And then we're going to talk about how that happens and how other people can get your property. So stay tuned for the 3rd segment. We'll be right back in a couple of minutes. Welcome back to our 3rd and final segment of our show tonight, Fight for Justice. I'm Arthur Fite, and Freeman Fite's with me today. We have our special guest, Karen Roper, who's the Revenue Commissioner for Calhoun County. There's a couple of subjects that we'd like to cover in our final segment. Once you get a value of your property, what can you do to challenge that? And number 2 is, how do you redeem it? Or how do you challenge that? So let's talk about how you challenge the values. Freeman, go ahead.
That's just a question I've heard a lot, and we've dealt with a few of these cases when someone isn't happy with the value of their property and they think it's been overvalued by the state. How would you go about challenging that?
And let's put up the chart number 5 while we have that discussion, if you would. Go ahead with that.
Okay. The Board of Equalization, as I said before, mails out their notification between end of June, July. And on the notification from the Board of Equalization is a date. A person has 30 days, calendar days, from that notice to date to protest to the Board of Equalization.
And what does the board do?
The Board of Equalization comes into session and they hear the complaints of the property owners, and the property owners is allowed to produce any kind of documents that may allow us to go outside the state guidelines on appraising property.
They make a decision, and Freeman, if the property owner like you is unhappy with the Board of Equalization decision,
what would be the next step?
Yeah.
Okay, once the Board of Equalization mails you a notice telling you what their results are, you have 30 days from their notice date to appeal to the Circuit Court of Calhoun County.
Okay. For that year?
For that year.
Yeah, by the way, how do people get on the Board of Equalization?
The Board of Equalization, each entity, each major school, each major city, and the county commission submits 3 names to the governor, and the governor appoints from those notices 3 members, and they serve for a 4-year period.
Now, if you
how many are on the Board of Equalization in this county?
3.
3, okay.
If you appeal it to the, say you don't like the Board of Equalization's determination, and you appeal it to Circuit Court, and there you're happy with what the Circuit Court does, what's to stop that same thing from happening again? Does the value stay the same or whatever the Circuit Court says?
That value is only good for 1 year, and then we have to go back, unless there is extenuating circumstances, we have to go back to the guidelines of the manual of the state of Alabama.
So you could be having to do it every year if you don't agree with it.
That's exactly right.
That doesn't happen though very often.
No, it don't. We try to work, the best we can with the state.
Well, let me ask you about one more deadline. You talked about 30 days after your value notice is to go to the Board of Equalization. 30 days after that to appeal it to a court. There's another deadline too, October 1, when the taxes are due. Tell us about that deadline and what you can do with that.
Okay, if you have failed to meet the Board of Equalization deadline or be aware that the board is in session, then you have 15 days from October 1st that the taxes are placed on the books to appeal to the Circuit Court of Calhoun County.
And then that gets to the end of the road. Okay, let's go back to the subject of redemption, because, and if you'll put chart number 4 up there, talking about redemptions, we can ask Karen about that. Okay, up on the chart we have redemption of property that's already been sold for taxes. If you redeem it, how do you do it and what do you have to pay?
Okay, in order to redeem it, you have to be the owner of the property. You have to pay the initial taxes plus interest, any advertising costs to the newspaper, any taxes that are due, you have to pay. If a person purchased your property at tax sale and there is an overbid amount or an excess bid, then you will ask the county commission, or we do, to give us that money, and then we take that money and return it to the purchaser of the property.
What is an overbid? Explain that.
Okay, if you purchase tax sale property, you can overbid what the initial taxes are. You are only paid interest on 15% of the value of the property. So a lot of these people that buy tax sale property, they look at the value, they overbid the 15%, so you're allowed a % a month interest on the overbid money. You can actually overbid more, but you only get interest on the 15%.
Okay.
We actually have professional people who do this for a living, don't they?
They do.
They buy taxes, and they buy property tax sales, and the annual interest they get on their money is 12%.
That's exactly right.
Just up to the 15% overbid. Now, if you're wondering about all the details of this, we're going to give you a test on it in a little while and see if you can remember everything Karen's told us. Of course, I'm just kidding about that. If you have questions about these issues, you can contact her at the County Administration Building. I have found Karen to be one of the most helpful public servants in this county. She's always willing to give you a hand and help you out. Now, we're not finished with the redemption. The state ends up with the title to the property, and how do they get? The person who buys the property at tax sale. We have some around here that do it all the time. They get what do they get when they buy it?
Okay.
To prove it.
Outside the interest, but
what kind of piece of paper do they get?
They get a certificate of assessment or purchase from.
Is that called a tax deed?
No, they get a certificate of purchase for 3 years, and then once the 3 years is up, if the property hasn't been redeemed, then they go to the probate judge of Calhoun County and submit that certificate, and she gives them a tax deed to the property.
Okay, that's another important data. 3 years.
3 years from the date
So
of the
the
sale.
homeowner who's had their property sold for taxes has 3 years to redeem that property and pay all these interests and taxes and fees. And incidentally, if the new owner has made improvements, they can get that improvement. That guy can get his improvement money too.
Yeah, he has 10 days to notify the person that he has made the improvements on the property, and if
to get his money back.
That's right, and he has to produce receipts and so forth. But you know, it gets a little more detailed, and that's when you need an attorney.
Good.
You do. Yeah.
That can be a squabble, can't it?
That's exactly right.
How is that squabble resolved?
Through the courts.
Well, I mean, through the probate court or through the circuit court?
Through the circuit court.
Okay. And then somebody's going to make a decision about how much is really owed on the property.
Right.
Does that happen very often?
Yes. It has recently. There's been a lot of cases that's gone to circuit court.
On the issue of how much the value of the improvements was?
Yes.
Okay. Now, what happens if somebody misses the 3-year deadline and they don't redeem them and they come in 5 years later? What can they do?
They cannot do anything through our office. They would have to contact the purchaser at the tax sale and work with them to see what kind of, I guess, what they can come up with to resolve the problem.
But if the purchaser doesn't want to give it back or sell it back, then they don't have to.
They don't have to. But the owner, the initial owner, could you know, get an attorney, go to court, and let the courts decide, especially if the person that purchases at the sale wants an astronomical amount of money to get it back. We've had it happen in Calhoun County. The courts has decided the amount that would be paid back to the original owner.
And so even though you've bought it at a tax sale and 3 years is run, that doesn't necessarily mean you were going to own it without some kind of challenge.
That's exactly right. You do not have clear title to the property. You only have the state's tax interest in that property.
So what happens if somebody buys that property, tax sale, and then resells it after 3 years?
They can resell it. I could sell you my interest. If I purchased it at the sale, I could sell you my, if you was willing to take a quick claim.
Yeah.
On the
property. It can be a mess, can't it?
It can exactly be a mess.
So thank you very much, Karen, for coming tonight. And let me say again that Karen Roper is the Commissioner of Revenue for this county. If you have a question, you can't remember everything she told you tonight, like you probably can't, I can't, call her. She doesn't mind helping anybody who has an issue with her office or what they do, either assessing the value or collecting taxes or trying to redeem it. She's more than willing to help you, and I appreciate your help in the past.
Appreciate the invitation to help.
Thank you for being a guest.
Appreciate
Come back
invitation.
next year.
Oh, okay. Sure will.
So thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week, same time.